I see the shift because, like, even people in my personal life, like friends and family, they're getting interested in the stock market. They say they want to trade, but I think they need to learn about investing first and just knowing about how to buy and sell a stock and like researching that before they get to trading because trading is a little bit more complex. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BlackGirlOption podcast. My name is Kayla Salem, and I'm your host. With each and every episode of the BlackGirlOption podcast, you all will be listening to me learn and discover new lessons on my path to being a consistently profitable trader. So thank you all for tuning in and enjoy the show. With this episode, I sit down and talk with Santino Drew. Santino has a very inspiring story. It's one of complete transformation. In this episode, you will hear Santino talk about growing up in New Jersey, where he lived in a drug-infested neighborhood, and how he submitted to a life of crime and was ultimately convicted and sent to prison for drug conspiracy. While in prison, he begins to change his mindset and mentality and start to learn about the stock market and options trading. He is now a successful options trader who teaches people the art of trading. I hope you all enjoyed the interview. All right. Hello, Santino. Thank you for coming on my podcast. I've noticed through, a mutual friend that we had who kind of brought us together, you have a very unique story in terms of how you got into investing and trading and things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But before we talk a little bit about that, I just want to hear like a backstory of your upbringing, like tell me about yourself.
Okay. Well, I was born in Chicago, Illinois. Okay. I moved to New Jersey when I was about 4, maybe 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And single parent household. Mom split from my dad, left Chicago, came over here. For whatever reasons, unknown to me. But yeah, so my mom's like she's a real soldier, she actually, by the time she had me, she didn't have any parents. Both her parents were already passed away at that point.
Wow.
And she basically taken herself to different places around the U.S. just, surviving and, just being the soldier that she is. So we ended up in New Jersey, in Jersey City, New Jersey. After that, I moved to New Brunswick, New Jersey, when I turned about maybe 10, 11 years old. New Brunswick is where Rutgers University is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, I moved from one, at the time I was living in Jersey City. Jersey City was, it was a big mess, super poverty, super ghetto, and the situation was the same for us, having a mom that, don't have any parents that didn't have any guidance of her own, just a sister who was a year older than her. And, we're moving around, living from place to place. This is the 80s. This is the Reagan era. So things were rough for people around that time. That's when a lot of these programs that we see now had just came to surface, the welfare and the food stamps and things of that nature. And I've had my taste of it all. Yeah, Jersey City was rough, Thankfully, my mother never, succumbed to alcohol or drug abuse. So that was cool. She was just basically an undereducated mom in the early 80s and feeling the woes of that era. And, she had 3 kids. I had an older brother and an older sister. And I was the youngest. And, she was just doing what she could to survive and make sure she keep food on our table. And, a place, a roof over our head, which was wherever we end up, at that time. I've been in foster homes. I lived in a couple foster homes growing up. It got to a point where it got real rough for my mom, and she needed some time to be able to get herself together. I think at that time she had just gotten her GED because both her parents was dead by the time she got out of high school. So, she went through her little things with that. So, we come to New Brunswick, and New Brunswick was a little bit better. At least we thought it was the first place we moved to. you know, it was pretty nice, you know, nice little urban area. And then, you know, something happened. We ended up getting kicked out of that place, and then we moved across town in New Brunswick. And that's when I realized, oh, New Brunswick's not that much far from Jersey City. So, you know, we moved to that area, and where we moved this time, it seems like everywhere we were living, a place that we could say was our apartment, it was always where all the action was happening at. So we live right around the corner from one of the, you know, busiest and drug infested blocks or streets in New Brunswick. And I would see that all the time growing up. I would, you know, see that going to the corner store for my mom. Or if she would send me to another corner store that was away from that particular street, I would go to that store anyway, hoping that they had whatever she was looking for, you know, because I just wanted to see it. I just wanted to, I was excited by it. It looked like they were having a lot of fun down there. It looked like, you know, people were a lot more well off than I was. But truthfully speaking, they were all just coming from the same place I was coming from, you know, and that's pretty much it, you know. So I grew up pretty much, you know, having, you know, the issues of being raised in poverty and you know, the toll it took on me, you know, having to live with foster parents for a minute and, you know, being separated from my brother and sister. I guess this affected me mentally growing up. And I was a problem in school. You know, I probably got kicked out of every school I ever went to. And the ones I didn't get kicked out of, it's because I didn't go to them. You know, so after getting kicked out of so many schools, finally, by the time I was supposed to go to ninth grade, they had labeled me neurologically impaired. They wanted to label me emotionally disturbed, but my mother wasn't having that. She said, my son's not emotionally disturbed. So they labeled me neurologically impaired. They tried to put me on medication. My mother wouldn't allow that either. You know, they said I was hyperactive, you know, ADD, all the above, you know, all the things that they told us back then in the early 90s, late 80s. These were the things that they were telling me. Right. But me, I just think I wasn't interested in what was going on in school. There was nothing to keep me in my seat. So, you know, I was always getting in some type of trouble. So as time moved on, you know, by the time I got 14, 15, and I was supposed to go to ninth grade, I went to ninth grade for about 2 weeks. So they sent me to a school called Bayard in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And this was the school where all the city's worst people go to. You know, so it was like a behavioral type school. And what really caught me about this school, I always heard about this school, and I always heard that, you know, because one side of town where I lived was at war with the other side of town. So you can end up with that other side of town in school with you. And I always heard about the school, how notorious it was and how you had to be tough to be there. So by the time I got there, the thing that I didn't like about the school is, you know, when they told us to go to recess after lunch, we ended up staying in recess for about 2-3 hours. And I said, what kind of school is this? I'm not even in class. Like, normally I'm cool with that. I'm cool with not going to class. But I said, oh, something's wrong with this. So then when I went to math class for the first time, they were trying to teach us out of like a 5th grade math book. And here it is, I'm 15 years old and you're teaching me out of a 5th grade math book. So at that point, you know, feeling full of myself and feeling like I'm grown, you know, obviously rebelling against whatever law she was trying to lay down and put forth. I called her from the principal. I went to the principal's office. I told him, I said, listen, I'm leaving the school right now. So open the doors, because they kept the doors locked. I said, open the doors and let me out. I don't want to be here. So he said, well, we should call your mother first. So I called my mother and I pretty much told her the same thing. And then she said, no, you got to stay there. I said, Ma, they just tried to teach me math out of a 5th grade math book. We stayed in recess for 3 hours. So she was like, don't make that decision to leave. So I left. I ended up making the decision. So as time went on around that same year of making these decisions and dwindling out of control, I also caught my first ever criminal charge at that time. So I had caught a charge for, they charged me with possession of cocaine.
Mm.
I had about maybe 40 or 50 bags of cocaine from me. I had just got from an older guy, trying my
Mhm.
hand out there. I was
Mhm.
already out there, smoking weed and doing all the wrong things, hanging with,
Mhm.
you know, basically at the time, I can't say the wrong guys because we were all wrong for each other. And,
Mhm.
so I
Did your
that
mom?
was
I
my,
have a question. I do have a question.
Mhm.
Did your mom try to shield you or steer you away from sort of your environment, or not?
Yeah, she always tried, and she did her best. Like I said, me getting kicked out of all of those schools, she wasn't sitting on the sideline. She was at, board of education meetings, losing her
Mhm.
jobs because she got to show up to the school for me.
Oh my
She's arguing with
gosh.
the director of education.
Mhm.
So she definitely had her gloves on the whole time.
Mhm.
And she did her best. But it's
Yeah.
only but so much you can do. It's nothing more powerful than a made up mind, and my mind was made up
Mm.
to gravitate towards what I was seeing out there. That's what I
Yeah.
was about. And of course, I'm still at the age where I would have to hide things. If I'm on the block and I see somebody might be like, "Yo, here come your mother riding through with such and such," because she wasn't driving at the time, and I would
Mhm.
go hide things like that. It wasn't a bold thing, and then I would have to hear when I come in the house at night, and me catch. I had caught a couple other minute criminal charges before that for like shoplifting and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Before I started selling drugs, me and my friends, we used to go to the mall and steal our clothes so we could look like the drug dealers look. You know,
Mm.
we we
Yeah.
we wasn't selling drugs at that time, so 13, 14, 15, we were stealing clothes.
You didn't have
So,
any money, so you wanted the clothes.
yeah, yeah, I wanted the clothes, but I didn't want to do what it took to take to get the clothes, the right
Mhm.
way. So,
Mhm.
my mother would have gave me her last dime if I was doing the right thing. I remember she had a
Mm.
conversation with me. She said, if you don't want to listen to me, then I can't put my hard work invested into you no more. You're not going to be getting the clothes that I used to buy you, which at that time she couldn't afford to be buying them anyway. So she
Mhm.
probably shouldn't have been buying them. Maybe she should have been sending a different message. But you know, yeah. So I catch the cocaine charge. Um, I get out. They let me go the first time. Still
Mhm.
charged. But they let me go. I didn't have to make bail or anything because I was only 15 years old. So when I
Mm.
went back to the block, the older guy made an announcement that I didn't tell. I didn't say anything to nobody. So it was like a celebration. That was like a
Yeah.
badge of honor. You know.
Yeah.
Um, Now I'm up here. I'm being praised. People recognize me for not being a snitch or a rat. And
Mhm.
the guy that actually gave me the drugs, he was somebody up there. So for him to be celebrating me made everybody else feel like, maybe I should show this kid some respect. So that was
Mhm.
like the start of it. And then 16, I caught more cases, just out doing knucklehead stuff, nothing that really amounted to anything. Some of the charges wasn't even about selling drugs or anything like that. Just out there, just allowing the wind to blow me in whatever direction the street's gonna take me
Mhm.
in. So,
Mhm.
um, 17, I caught a gun charge.
Mm.
So when I caught the gun charge at 17, I actually had some drugs on me too. I was already on probation for
Mhm.
the cocaine charge I caught when I was 15. So
Mhm.
I'm running around violating probation, not going to school. I'm still, smoking weed and getting high, running around with the fellas. And
Mhm.
now this time they kept me, and I went to
Mm.
the youth corrections. I went to the detention center, and
Mhm.
that was the first worst experience of my life being there. And the reason why I say the first because obviously it didn't stop there. So I had a lot of those worst experiences, few of them. And
Mhm.
I turned 17. Um, what happened was opposed to going to juvenile prison,
Mhm.
I chose to take a program. So when they gave me that program, I chose to leave that program and go on a run. So now I'm on
Mhm.
a run from
Oh
17 to
no.
19. I'm on a run for
Mhm.
2 years. My mother telling me turn myself in. I'm not listening to her. At this time, I'm
Mhm.
not staying at her house. Me and my friends have an apartment, so I don't have to
Mhm.
listen to her. That's how I feel, at
Mm.
that time, which was
Mhm.
totally wrong. Um, so now I end up getting caught and I go to adult corrections for the first time. So now I'm in there. I did about 9 months and ended up coming home on another program that
And how was that
gets you out
different than
early.
youth correction?
Oh, it's a big difference. You weren't being pampered by your mom. In the detention center, you have more access to your mom or your parents. Whoever your guardian was. The visits were different. You're more lenient. You're still being treated like a baby at that point, like a kid. But once you get to the big house, rules change. It's a lot different. Now, when your parents come in there, they got to take off their shoes. They can't have no wire in their bras or anything like that. They running through their pocketbooks and searching them. You wasn't going through too much of that in the detention home, for youth. But yeah, once you get up there, it's a totally different game. You're running into more guys. You're seeing people with drug habits. Their drug habits is on display. The effects of being on drugs and now, having to kick that habit is on display. So, man, it was just much different. The officers talk to you different. They know you're not a kid no more. So you're just like, you're 18, but they're going to treat you like you're 45, So, it was much different, much easier to get into trouble. There was a lot of drugs in there, a lot of hustling going on in there at the time. And I was just trying to be a part of it all. I ended up doing 9 months at that time and came home on a program called ISP, Intense Supervision Program. And although I wasn't getting high and stuff no more, I couldn't abide by the curfew. So I ended up getting violated on that multiple times until they finally said, you know what? Just finish the rest of your time that you were supposed to do. So I went back and did another 9 months in the county jail. And then I'm finally home. But this time, now I'm home with no restraints, nobody to report to. So I'm feeling like I got a clean slate with the streets. So it took me about 2 weeks. Actually, when I was on ISP, because they require you to have a job, and when they release you on it, they actually give you 30 days to find a job. So that kind of put pressure on you.
Yeah.
And if you don't find a job, they'll tell you we'll find one for you. And the job they're going to find for you is probably going to be Wendy's or McDonald's. And then, being an 18-year-old kid, you don't want your friends seeing you working at Wendy's or McDonald's. So, psychological thing, right? You still got an image to uphold. So, I ended up getting violated. I come home now. I don't have anybody to answer to. So, my first day home, one of my friends took me over to New York, Washington Heights, got me some clothes, we smoked some weed, we got high, we talked about what we was going to do to get some money. So it was an ongoing thing from there, from 1999 to 2002, I caught another case, ended up getting adult probation this time, turned around and caught another case while on probation. And I had my daughter at this time. I'm 22 now. I had my daughter.
What year is this?
This is 2002.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it was just spiraling out of control from there. I always had a talent for rapping. So from 17 to that time, 2002, I had been rapping. I had stopped, in between, stints of going to jail or whatever, but I still was rapping. Me and my partner, we had one of the biggest rap groups in the city, probably the biggest rap group in the city and in the surrounding area. And I always had a knack for rapping, always loved hip hop. I love it. And was always good at it. And but I was mixing it too.
What were your biggest influences in rap?
Oh man, whatever it was. I mean, actually, my sister gave me that bug. My sister she's a hip hop historian, my older sister. And, she used to record all the hip hop that used to come on back in the 80s. So I can't say who influenced me, all the greats, Jay-Z, Nas, and, some of the newer guys like 50 Cent and all of that. I was already,
into that.
Well into rap myself before they came about. But yeah, these were the guys that did it, your KRS-Ones, your Big Daddy Kanes, the old school guys,
Yeah.
And, Yeah, so that was way past your era. So way before your era. So so
Yeah, I
these were
was
the
too young
guys
for
for me.
that.
Yeah, definitely. So these were the guys for me. And
Mhm.
I just, I did it because my friends were doing it, so I tried it, and I ended up, essentially being just as good as them, if not better. And
Mhm.
so I'm rapping at the time. I got my daughter still running around in the streets and doing things and doing shows and still getting into street business, getting in beefs with people, getting in shootouts, and you know, doing whatever the streets bring. Besides having a real hardcore drug habit.
Mhm.
Other than that, like I was with whatever out there, and so 2005 came along, and I caught another case, and this was the first time that I actually went to adult state prison.
Mm.
So in that, I was always an inquisitive type kid. I would always
Mhm.
listen to older guys. So even when I
Mhm.
went to jail at 18, an
Mhm.
older guy gave me a book that he thought I should read, and it was called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I
Mm.
respected this old guy. Even though he was known for getting high and everything, I knew he was really smart.
Mhm.
So anytime he speak, I would listen. So he
Mhm.
gave me that book. I read that book. It was an amazing book. And
Mhm.
that opened me up to a different way of thinking. Even though it didn't totally reroute me,
Mhm.
it put something in reserve in the back of my mind that I can always use later on when I'm ready to use it.
Yeah.
And so fast forward back to 2005, I go to state prison for the first time. And
Mhm.
another older guy gave me a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Mhm.
When I read that book, it opened me up. So at this point, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to come home and stay home. I'm
Mhm.
ready to do something different. So I did a bunch of studying in there. One of these guys that I was cool with, he had a outsourced a business management class from
Mhm.
like this online college back. I didn't even know nothing about online
Mhm.
then, but they had this online college,
Mhm.
and they would send him the material into the prison. And once he's finished studying, they would send him a test. He got to mail a test back within a certain amount of days. So whenever
Mhm.
he was finished with his books, he would give them to me.
Mm.
So this is how I started learning about business and things like that. Because mind you, at this point, I only have a GED, and I got the GED at 20 years old.
Mhm.
So I never been to anyone's college or anything like that. I got my GED in the county jail at 20 years old
Mhm.
because they made me do it. They said you
Mhm.
got to get your GED as a part of this program you want to take. So I got it,
Mm.
and actually passed it with flying colors too. And
Wow.
so as time went on, 2005, I'm thinking in my mind, I want to stop this. I want to stop the street stuff. I got a daughter, I'm
Mhm.
with her mom at the time. So I'm coming home a new man. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And rest assured, one thing led to another, and I'm right back in the streets again. But this time I am turned all the way up.
Mm.
And now I'm out there. I'm trying to take over blocks and doing all types of unnecessary stuff, man. Just dwindling
Uh-huh.
out of control and pushing myself further away from my daughter because even though I'm
Mhm.
taking care of her, I'm in her life, but the things I'm doing can,
Take you away
basically
from
just
her.
banish me from her life. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm doing that. I started rapping again. And the rap for me with the hustling and the street life, it went hand in hand because I always
Mhm.
convinced myself that I needed to sell drugs to make the money to fund my rap career because I always wanted to be my own boss with the rap thing.
Mhm.
I wanted to control my situation. And that convincing of that, led
Mhm.
to so many different issues because it was like I almost felt like in order for me to rap and talk the things that I'm talking, I also need to be living it. I
Mm.
also need to be able to, because that was the era back then. The era of rap
Yeah.
then was, who's really out here doing what they're saying, what they say they're doing.
Yeah.
Who's really getting money? Let me see it. Who's showing
Mhm.
up without a deal with jury on, with a nice
Yeah.
car, with your entourage? Nowadays, it's
Yeah.
not about that. You get hot on YouTube, somebody sign you. They don't care where you're from. They don't care if you got
That's
money or
it.
not. You get money later. you know, but back then it was all about that image. It was such an image you had to uphold in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. So, you know, that eventually led to me, we had what you call a trap house or whatever they would like to call it. And we were selling weed and selling coke out of there, and the house.
And this is in New York or in New Jersey?
This is in Jersey. Yeah, this is in New Jersey. New York was where we used to go to get our product from. So we would go to New York and buy our drugs and bring it back to Jersey. But at this point, things have changed. Now you could get your work, or they call it your work. You could get your work from around the corner now, you know, which is your supply of drugs. And so we're running this operation out of this house, you know, me and a bunch of other quote unquote goons, and guns in there any given second. You know, the place been robbed before, you know, people, the guy next door, well, across the street from us got murdered. Somebody kicked in his house and robbed him. So it was a bad situation headed for worse, right? So now the police, the task force, they raided the place unlawfully. What I mean by that is they didn't have the proper search warrants, right? So they didn't catch me in the house because I got out through the back window. And so they charged everybody in the house with running a drug manufacturing resort. That's what they called it. I never even heard of that before.
Yeah.
And so at this time, I'm away, but somehow they got word that I was in that house. So 2 weeks later, they arrested me and charged me as well. So I made bail, and at this point, you know, I'm very close. At this point, you know, I got mixtapes out. I got mixtape with DJ Who Kid. I was supposed to do a mixtape with Superstar J. And I got a guy that's working with me at the time that was an industry A&R. A lot of people know him. So he's basically helping me manage my career. And it's happening right now. But I still haven't decided to leave this stuff alone. You know, all the detrimental stuff. So now I'm out. I got this case. Use most of my money on bail and living on the go, you know, and you know, a couple guys that I knew that I grew up with, they came to me and said, listen, we're out in Pittsburgh and we're doing XYZ. You know, it's a whole lot of money out there. So I'm like, yeah. And I heard about what they were doing. And so they was like, listen, man, this is over out here for you. We know you're trying to do the rap thing. This is where you could get the money at. We getting X, Y, and Z every weekend up there. And I'm like, wow, you guys are making that. These guys told me, you know, they can do $250,000 in a weekend. I'm like, wow, let's do it. So, you know, I jump in the car with them, take a trip up to Pittsburgh. They had already been up there. And once again, I ran into a brick wall with the house raid. But now I got up and dusted myself off after running into the brick wall. I actually ran through it. Now I'm headed for a steel wall, or maybe just run myself off a curb. Pittsburgh is a very dangerous city. On top of it being federal, like it's a federal city, it's infested with federal agents. I don't know this, and I don't know that New Jersey and Pittsburgh has a very notorious relationship. So apparently people from New Jersey are notorious for bringing heroin up to Pittsburgh. And this is what we're doing at the time. So we're trying to sell heroin. And I'm just looking at the opportunity like, wow. So, you know, I'm making more ground with the rap. You know, I finally got my stuff on Hot 97 and 105. And I'm linking with different DJs, DJ Sus One, DJ Clue. So things are happening for me because of the drug money, you know, because it costs money to, you know, basically politic these connections in the game at this time, you know. So now I'm up there in Pittsburgh. I'm only up there 6 months, and they raided a hotel that we were in, and they found about, you know, a kilo of heroin, and they charged me with a state charge at the time. So you know, the feds were acting like they wasn't involved. So they charged me on a state level because they didn't want to expose their hand to the rest of the investigation. So I met a young kid up there that I was selling heroin to, and the whole time, unbeknownst to me, he was under federal investigation the whole time. They had our phones tapped, big wiretap situation, and they essentially arrested 36 people on that indictment, right? So now, after all was said and done, I go to the feds, I go to trial, I lose, and I get 22 years. And at the same time, I got the case in New Jersey. So I'm facing life in Pittsburgh, and I'm facing 20 years in New Jersey. I ended up beating the New Jersey case because their search warrant process was flawed, right? But now I got to come back up here, and I'm going back and forth in planes and little small buses that look like dog kennels. And I'm back in Pittsburgh, but now I got to wrestle this 1,000-pound gorilla called the federal government. And anybody know the Fed has a 99% conviction rate.
Yep. And
very little people get their cases overturned once they get sentenced to whatever amount of time. So, especially in drug cases. So now I'm up here, I lose trial, I get 22 years. But I knew just in my mind that wasn't the end of my career. I just knew it was so unbelievable that I even caught the Fed case, even though I was doing everything that I was doing. I just never saw that for me, right? And it was so surreal. So I had a desperation to get home to my daughter because I love my daughter. No matter what I did, I always make sure I was with my daughter, did homework, cooked for her, everything that you probably wouldn't expect people living my life to do. And everything except not live that life, and which was my worst mistake. And I had this sense of desperation, man, and it just turned into sheer optimism. And wasn't nobody going to tell me, especially after I beat the New Jersey case, that I wasn't going to do the same thing in Pittsburgh. I didn't care about the statistics. I didn't care about the percentages of people, that get convicted. I didn't care nothing about that. All I know is I stayed optimistic every day in such a pessimistic atmosphere. And it was very hard to do. So I just started coming up with different things that I seen wrong with that case, what they were doing. And I gathered all this intel. I went to trial anyway. After people tell me don't go to trial, you can get life, don't do it. So at this point, I don't even know how much time I'm going to get. But I know I could get anywhere from 10 years to life for what I was being charged with. So I went to trial anyway because in my mind, I wanted to get home in time for my daughter's graduation, in time for her prom. I wasn't taking 20 years or whatever they was trying to offer me. I wasn't taking it. I went to trial and I lost. And I lost, but I knew I had something. I knew I had an ace in my hand. I knew I did. Just in my heart, I knew no matter what the statistics were, no matter how many people told me, listen, people don't beat the feds. No matter how much that game is rigged, I knew I had something. So at this time now I get sentenced, then I go to federal prison. Because first you go from being in federal custody, going back and forth to court. Once court is settled, now you got to go to prison. And they can send you anywhere across the country. And federal prison is rough. It's a bad place because you're putting people from different cities and states in the same place. It's not like being in New Jersey where you're just with people maybe from Jersey City or whatever. When you're in the feds, you're with New York guys, Baltimore guys, Louisiana guys, Chicago guys. So it's the way it's structured is very dangerous, And so I'm in there, and the minute I arrived, I was sitting in a little bullpen they have us sitting in before they, give us our clothes and tell us where we're going. So I'm sitting there, and this old guy said to me, "Hey, this your first time in here?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, I'm back on a violation. I violated my probation." He said, "Hey, man, this is a pretty good jail." He said, "I know it sounds funny saying jails are good, but this is a pretty good jail." So I said, "What you mean by that?" He said, "Well, it's a lot of things going on in here, different, things that you can get into. He said they really took away all the great programs. He said, but there's still some things left. And there's some good people in here that if you're trying to learn something, you can learn from them. And he said, Mom, I'm just going to put it to you like this. It's either going to be your university or your playground. He said, whatever one you want to do, you want to get into drugs and get into cell phones and sell drugs and make money, you can do that. Or you can spend your time learning something. It's a whole lot of that here too. So I chose the latter. I chose to go to the university side of things. And I was already fighting my case, I had already came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be in that situation again. So now I just, my first day there, I ran into a guy that I was in state prison with. And I seen him because in the feds, like, it's different from the state. You actually move around. It looked like a college campus. It resembled a college campus. The way the buildings were structured and the way when they call a move. A move is, okay, they make an announcement and say, anybody going to work or anybody going to any programs or the yard or wherever you going, to the gym, you got 15 minutes to get there. So for that 15 minutes, you see people moving about. If you had like an aerial view of it, you wouldn't even think it was prison, you know? So now I see this guy that I was in state prison with. So I stop him. I said, hey, he said, oh, Santino, they told me you was here, because what happens is if anybody from Jersey come, everybody from Jersey knows, right? So now I see A and I say, where you going, man? He had like this little bag on him, and I never seen that before. Like he had like a little gym bag. I'm like, damn, they sell gym bags here? And he got on sneakers like guys wear from the streets. And I'm like, where the hell am I at, And I'm like, where you going, eh? Because I always knew him, even from state prison, to be trying to do something better for himself mentally. He was always trying to educate himself. So that's why I asked him the question. So he said, no, I'm in this little stock class up here. And I said, the stock class? They got a stock class? He said, yeah, well, it's a guy that run it. His name is Wall Street. And he run it. I said, he's black? He said, yeah, he's black. He from Jersey. I said, yeah? He said, yeah. So I said, how do I get in it? So he asked me what unit I'm in. And I told him. He said, well, he lives on your unit. So I'm like, all right, cool. So he explained him to me. I said, yeah, I did see that guy. So then I get with the guy at Wall Street, and he told me, yo, you just got to sign up for it. He said, because what happens is when they put out the list for this new class, so what they do in the feds, they would allow people to teach things. They're not funding the programs themselves, but in the library, they got a bunch of different classrooms, and different people can run programs. You had credit programs in there. You had CDL people teaching you everything about CDLs, except you just can't take your driver's test, obviously. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You had all types of different programs up there, and he was running the stock class. It was called Stock Market 101. And so I ended up getting with him, and he said, listen, you got to, when that list come out, you better be the first one on it, because it's only 25 people per session, and it always gets filled the first day. So I seen what he was talking about, a bunch of people trying to get on there. So I managed to get on there. And I took the class, and the way this guy was delivering the information, I was just so intrigued by it. And mind you, at the time, I'm seeking something to go home with, because in my mind, I know I'm going home. Even though I got 22 years, I never accepted that fact. I knew I had my appeal arguments ready. I knew I was ready to put my arguments in so I could get this 22 years off my back. And that was all the only thing that occupied my mind at that time. So now I'm learning stocks. Finally, they had an options class that the kid that actually introduced me to it, he was in the class. So it was only a 4-person class. It was a small group. So I asked, the guy at Wall Street who was teaching the stock market class, which was a very informative class. That's what opened me up and made me want more. So I asked him, I said, hey, how do I join the options class you guys got? So he said, well, it's only 4 people at a time. You're going to have to wait till somebody either, get thrown in the hole, go to another jail, or go home. So me, I'm like, I'm not waiting on all of that. So I managed to get a copy of the books in which he was teaching options from.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the books and I started teaching myself.
Mm-hmm.
But this is 6 months after I had been studying the market. And you figure 6 months in the feds is probably like 4 or 5 years out here because I'm incarcerated. So I have time available to me that most people don't feel like they have out here in the world. So I'm studying. I'm a sponge. I'm doing that and I'm fighting my case at the same time. So he used to always say to me, he used to be like, we'll be walking to the library in the morning together, and he would look at me and say, damn, man, they gave you 22 years. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't have 22 years. I'll be home in 2 years. That's what I always used to say to him. Wow. And he was like, I know you will. You are going home. He said, I just can't believe, man, you over here DJing a case over here and DJing trying to learn the stock market over here. He said, you got those turntables working, man. Yeah. He used to always say that to me. He couldn't believe it. So now I'm learning options. I'm doing this. So as time goes on, finally, I'm just going to skip right to it. Finally, I get my decision back. And I won my appeal. Wow. So now they had to take away my 20. And guess what? It happened in the time that I said it was going to happen. I put that 2-year mark in my mind. I didn't know for sure. Nobody knows when you file your appeal how long it's going to take for them to get back to you.
Yeah.
So, not to mention, about a month before I found out that decision, I finally had to tell my daughter how much time I had. My mother forced me to do it. Because at that point, she didn't know how much time her dad had to do. So they came to visit me, and my daughter said to me, she was like, my mom told me how much time you really got. I said, oh, yeah, your mom didn't even let me tell you. She told you, huh? She said, yeah. And then she started crying. She was like, 22 years? She was like, And then she said something to me that struck a nerve. She said, why couldn't you just tell like they did on you? That's what she said to me. She said, why couldn't you just tell like they told on you? Now, here it is. This is your, at the time, 12-year-old daughter saying this to you. She was, matter of fact, she was 13 because she was 10 when I got, when this all happened. Yeah. And, I just said, I said, baby, I got to be accountable for what I do. I can't bring nobody else in and blame them for the results of decisions that I make. And I don't advise you do the same thing as you get older. I know you will never go through this stuff that I'm going through, but if you go through anything in life, be accountable. That's power. Wow. So she said, yeah, but you got 22 years. And I said, look at me. Her and my mother both was crying. I said, look at me, both of y'all. I'm not doing 22 years. I'm not doing 22 years. I said, look at me in my eyes. She was looking at me. I said, clear those tears from your face. I said, I'll be home in 2 years. I promise you. I don't know where that came from, why I said it, where this 2-year thing came from. So it might not have been a month before, maybe 2 months before. So fast forward back to the decision. So now we had already filed our, what they call a brief. Your brief is your argument of why you're saying that this case and this time should be taken off of you. We didn't get a response. You're supposed to get a response from the prosecutor. So we didn't get a response for a long time. So finally I got it, in the feds, you're able to get emails through a system called Core Links. So I get an email from the court-appointed attorney that they gave me to help me fight my case. And she said, I got great news. There's been a break in your case. Now, at this time, they were changing. I don't know if you've been seeing on the news like in the past 4 years, 5 years, but they were doing a lot. Different senators were trying to. And then you had Obama had 980 people released from federal prison, And
when he was doing those commutations, or he was commuting people's sentences?
Yeah. And he was giving pardons and everything. I couldn't get a pardon. So, a friend of mine told me I should file for a pardon. And I said to him, I'm not putting in no pardon. He said, why not? I said, because I'm fighting my appeal. He said, what does that mean? I said, that's saying that I don't think I'm going to win my appeal. So then he finally said something that makes sense to me. He said, listen, to think you're going to win your appeal and to put in this pardon ain't going to hurt you none. Put it in. So I put it in anyway. I put it in. I hated to put it in. I hated to put it in. Because I just felt like it was tainting my optimism. I felt like I was being disconnected from the universe at that point if I did that. So now I get my decision. She tells me that they're overturning the case. They got to resentence me. And so basically I had two cases. I had the conspiracy, which carried life. And then I had the actual drugs that I got arrested with. So their whole process for getting those drugs out of that hotel was tainted and unlawful. So that's what I proved. So now they had to throw the drugs out. So being that they had to throw the drugs out, now they got two choices. Either take this 22 years off of my back and give me a better sentence, or we can go to trial again. And they didn't want to go to trial again because now they don't have the drugs to keep showing the jury every time they say something. They had a bag of drugs there, and they were saying this is enough drugs to get everybody high in Steelers Stadium. That's what they kept saying. So now they don't have these drugs to make this spectacle with, right? So they didn't want to go to trial. So first they tried to come with 10 years. I said, absolutely not. I'm going to miss my daughter's graduation. So then they finally brought it all the way down to 7 years. And I took it. Why? Because I already had 4 years in and I wasn't going to have to do the whole 7 anyway. I would have did 2.5 more years and came home. So that's what happened. I came home in those 2 years that I kept continuously saying and programming into my mind. I came home not only in 2 years, but I came home on my daughter's birthday.
Wow.
On her
the way
birthday.
things line up.
Yeah. There's power in optimism, right? So now, options. I'm studying options the whole time. I'm studying options every day in and day out. I'm jousting back and forth with the other brothers that are studying options with me. We're a small community in there. It's not a lot of people that's really buckling down on this. You get your guys that want to buy books just so people could think they're intelligent, but they're not really putting in work to understand this game, right? So now I moved to a different prison. And the prison I moved to now happened to be the biggest federal prison in America in Fort Dix, New Jersey. Everyone tries to get to Fort Dix, New Jersey for whatever reason, because it's one big playground, right? You can make money. People got cell phones like crazy. You know, you can do all the things except have a girlfriend in there. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to get to Fort Dix. So in the federal system, that's where your more sophisticated criminals go to. The ones who violate securities exchange laws, the ones who got larceny, the ones who steal money, the ones who credit card swiping, the ones who doing loan fraud, bank fraud. They go there. And there's some smart guys. So I meet with a whole host of guys that just help push my process even more forward. I had a guy teaching me economics, a guy named Lenny Bogdan. I met with, and he became my mentor, a huge guy from Wall Street that did insider trading and ended up getting 7 years. And I'm not going to mention his name. He asked me never to mention his name on public forums. But I will tell you this. He's one of the people that Kim Kardashian petitioned to have set free from prison. And he was my mentor. Didn't know nothing about options, but told me a whole lot about the back office, how Wall Street's back office work. Because he was one of the biggest hedge fund guys at the time. Right? Oh, man, I ran into guys that understood real estate like the back of their hand. And it was just so much information in there because of the caliber of guys that get arrested in there. And everybody wants to go to Fort Dix.
It's like that guy said to you at the other prison, it could be a playground or it could be a university. And it seems like what you're saying is you use it as literally like a university. You get to talk to people who are experts in their field, which most people do that in a college setting, but you're doing that in a prison setting. Either way, you're still getting that education, that information. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and I was just soaking it all up. I was just feeling blessed and feeling like, you know what, this happened for a reason. You know, so hardships will come to you, adversity will come to you, but how you view it is what will determine how you move forward. So I felt like I was placed in that position for a reason.
Mm.
Because if I hadn't been, I probably wouldn't be here to speak to you. I'd probably be dead the way I was moving, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I got the most out of that situation. I learned the most important lesson I learned was about me, you know, and this is why I was able to come home this time with not one inklet of a thought to sell drugs again, to commit crimes, to even be in the streets. I don't even have the same friends I used to have anymore, you know? And those were all conscious decisions made by me long before I came home. I no longer wanted to be an idiot for the system and this thing they call a trap. I no longer wanted to walk into the traps that they laid. I felt like an idiot when I really thought about the whole scheme of things, right? So I'm learning these options. And Fort Dix, you heard of Martin Shkreli?
The guy that like bought the insulin or something like that.
The HIV drug. The
HIV drug. Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
So just to let you know what kind of guys come there, right before I left prison, he came there. And, you know, he was there, actually one of the first guys to ever create cryptocurrency was there, a Russian guy. And they locked him up for it 20 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so many different people you meet, so many different minds in there, so much brilliance in there. And it's like, for me, I felt like I would be foolish not to take advantage of this. And it's not a situation where you go looking for these people. When you're doing the right thing and you're creating momentum for yourself, you know, people come into your life at the right time. So now one of my friends was like, hey, that guy Martin Shkreli, he's the librarian over there now in the library, you know, because we get jobs in jail or whatever. And he was like, you should go talk to him. I said, for what? He didn't know nothing. He just was a hedge fund guy that was scamming. He was like, man, maybe you should talk to him. I didn't want to talk to him because what he displayed in public, I didn't really like the character he displayed. And I didn't like the fact that so many people needed this drug that he was willing to boost the price 900% or whatever he did. You know, I don't need to talk to you, you know. And I'm glad because now I just seen a recent interview with him and he still have that same arrogance about him. So, but in jail, he's scared. He's like a little, you know, he's like a cornered rabbit, you know?
Yeah.
And, but it was just so much information there. So I came home in 2018 on my daughter's birthday. And I started trading with money that I had from, you know, saving up from checks and stuff like that. I managed to land a job. And it was all just falling into place because I had a book of plans that I had. And one of my plans, because I had took this class while I was in there called the Serve Safe class. And Serve Safe certification is basically says that your restaurant is following all of the guidelines in which how you handle food. So I just got it. I just felt like I needed it. Let me get it. It'll help me get a job. So in my plans, my first 6 months out, my plan was it was actually written. I still have it. I posted every now and then on IG too. I want to get a job in a hotel, hospital, or college and university industry as a cook. And lo and behold, when I came home, I landed a job at one of the most prestigious hotels in New Jersey, Shore Hills, Hilton. I landed a cooking job. So from there, taking my little money, you know, trading and doing things, still didn't really know how I was going to, you know, light fire to my plans and jumpstart my journey to fulfilling my goals. So I started trading, blew up a few accounts.
I can relate.
Listen, I took $300. My first $300 turned it into about $6,000 and blew it up. After that, I took about $400 or $500, turned that into about $15,000 and blew it up.
Mm-hmm.
And to the listeners out there, blow it up means you messed your account up. You went broke in that account. Mm-hmm. My last time, so I blew up account twice. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because of, you don't blow up accounts because of what you don't know. You blow up accounts because of a lack of discipline.
Yep.
Not having a sound plan. Mm-hmm. Not having a consistent profit target. Mm-hmm. And just, pretty much just, taking whatever the market is willing to give you. Not taking
strategy.
What the market is willing to give you, but no strategy. Yeah. You got to take what the market gives you, because if you try to be greedy, what happens is you'll end up blowing up that trade and essentially your account. So now, my last time, I just got released from the Hilton. I had one check. I blew that up too. And then I got my income tax check. And I didn't blow that up. So I took that money. I took half of that money. I only got like $1,200. And I managed to turn $600 into about $40-something thousand in a matter of 5 months.
Wow. That's life-changing. Like, once you realize how you can trade and trade consistently and successfully, it's life-changing.
Yeah, it is. And I told my significant other, my girlfriend, I said, listen, I'm not paying no bills with this check. I'm trading it. And she looked at me and said, go for it. And I did it.
Wow. And
around 2019, I caught a lot of nice licks. One of my best trades was a Tesla trade I took. I purchased a leap on Tesla in April of 2019. I paid about $980 for this leap. So a leap is a 1 to 3 year contract. Normally they don't have 3-year contracts. So 1 to 2 year option contract. When you buy options, obviously you got to buy expirations. So I had a year expiration. So as a matter of fact, I'm wrong. I bought it in June. And my expiration was June of 2020. And it was $980. At the time, Tesla was trading at about $185. It had been beaten up. It had been beaten to the ground. It was the most shorted stock on the market at the time. 78% of their float was being shorted. So the float is the amount of shares that's available. The short means that most of the big institutions and hedge funds were betting against Tesla. So they wanted it to go down. So it was beat up in the media. Everybody, Jim Cramer, they were beating it up. The newspapers, Wall Street Journal, IBD, they were beating it up. But I knew I seen Tesla at this level multiple times. And history always repeats itself, especially when you're a technical analysis, trader and you understand how to read a stock's chart. You know that historic price movement matters, right? So I seen Tesla at this point before, and I also seen how fast it came out of that hole. So I told my girlfriend, I said, listen, I'm about to buy this leap. She said, what strike you gonna buy? I said, I'm gonna buy a 320 strike. Mind you, it's trading at 186 or 184, something in the 180s, right? She said, you sure about that? You think it's going to go way back up there? I said, first of all, it's been in the 300s, and I definitely think it's going back there. I think this is their year. So I bought that leap, and let's just say after that leap, Tesla had a bad earnings report, so it pulled back on me. It ran up running into earnings. When the earnings report came out, it pulled back. After it pulled back, it took off again. By July, Tesla had a good earnings report. The stock price had went from 200 and some change all the way up to 500 by December.
So you deep in the money at this point.
Yeah. So by December, I'm already 180 points in the money. That $980 has now turned into $25,000.
Whew.
$25,000. I can't even count the amount of percentage of return that is. So I don't get out at this time. I didn't get out yet. I had gotten word that Ron Barron, which was the biggest Tesla holder, was coming on to speak on CNBC sometime soon. So this was towards the end of December. So January, Ron Barron comes on. He comes on in one day. That one day, Tesla had already came off another good earnings report. That one day, Ron Barron caused Tesla's stock price to go up 100 and something points. So now Tesla's sitting at 980 in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. It pulled back to about 960. My leap was worth $69,000.
Wow.
68, 69. A hell of a return.
Yes.
But at this time, I had already, made do on some other great plays, because people talk about how great 2020 was. 2019 was great for me as well. But 2020 was great because so many new people entered the market. We had 485 new IPOs in 2020. So this is what made it great. A bunch of new players came in from the company side and the investment side. So, and then the recovery from the big drop after the pandemic. So, which is what markets tend to do after they take such a beating. So I witnessed Tesla go through his own little pandemic and fall from 3 and some change all the way down to about 170. By the time I got to 185, I took that trade, best trade of my life.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You got to tell that story for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I will. And I don't mind, because the one thing I didn't do, though, and the one thing you don't want to do, to avoid FOMO, you have to discipline yourself. So sometimes I used to get the thought of, damn, why didn't I just buy 10 contracts? It would have only cost me $9,000. I would have turned $9,000 into $600 and something thousand. But I never get caught up in that thought, because that says I'm not grateful for what I did do. When you're saying what you wish you had done, that means you're not grateful for what you actually did. So I try to keep gratitude at the forefront of my attitude all the time,
So would you consider your strategy to be a swing trader, meaning you hold your positions for a longer period of time, or do you consider yourself a day trader, or both?
No, I'm a swing trader.
Okay.
Preferably a swing trader. I used to have a strategy I would do on Fridays. I would call it day trade Fridays, because prices tend to spike, whether up or down, on Fridays. So, I would trade certain super volatile stocks on Friday. I only trade volatility. I'm what you call a volatility trader. So I'm trading the super movers, Tesla, Netflix, Zoom, Snow. I'm trading the super movers. I like super volatility. I like what it does for my options value. And also, I'm a growth investor. So my portfolio is consistent of nothing but growth stocks. I don't have anything value that could be considered value in my portfolio. I caught this information late. I jumped in this game late. Not late, but later on in life. And I don't feel like I have the same privilege to purchase growth stocks. And if I'm talking about retiring on this portfolio or passing it down to somebody else, I want to find the companies that are coming up now. The companies that are only 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. I don't want to trade or invest in the companies that are 30 years old. Not that they're not great companies and staples of our economy. I want to find the new staples that are in the making. So, I'm definitely a swing trader. I hold my positions. Even now, I have 4 or 5 positions in which I brought some time options positions. And they're looking funny now, and I never worry about how they look now. I just, long as nothing changes on the chart or nothing changes fundamentally with that particular company, I sit on my hands. I park my money there, and I wait for it to do what it has to do for me.
Mm-hmm. So I'm really big on like trading psychology and like having that mentality for trading. When you bought that Tesla stock for $980, what how was your psychology, your mentality in keeping it and not selling it once it went to $2,000 or $3,000 or $10,000 or 20,000? What kept you in that position?
Well, first of all, it was a leap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could have been gotten out of that position with a profit,
Mm-hmm.
because as you know, when you purchase an option and you purchase a strike price, right? So Tesla was trading at 185 or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, 180 something, and
Mm-hmm.
I purchased 320 strike. Tesla had already made money long before it hit that strike,
Mm-hmm.
and I could have gotten out.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked at the fact that Tesla is normally never this cheap. So it's like you go to, a sneaker store, a clothes store, and you see your
Mm-hmm.
favorite garment, your favorite brand, and this thing is like 500% off right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? You're going to take
Mm-hmm.
advantage of that. So being that I paid so little for the contract, I had already fixed in my mind, being that I don't need this 980 for anything, because
Mm-hmm.
once Tesla fell to that price point, I had already purchased shares of
Mm-hmm.
Tesla too.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm thinking in my head, okay, worst that could happen is I get my $980 back.
Mm-hmm.
But the best that could happen, what's even worse than losing this $980 is me
Mm-hmm.
getting out early and not letting Tesla really grow into itself.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I'm reading about Tesla the whole time because, one of the first stocks that my teacher, Wall Street,
Mm-hmm.
he made me track Tesla.
Mm.
Track Tesla stock for 6 months straight for him because he was paper trading from inside of jail.
Wow.
So I became intrigued by Tesla. I became connected
Mm-hmm.
to this company and this guy,
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk. So I started reading about it. I took it a little further than just tracking the opening and closing price. So at this
Mm-hmm.
time, I didn't know it was going to do that, but I knew Tesla had something in the
Mm-hmm.
making. And when it had that first good earnings report, that's when I said, I'm not selling this because
Mm-hmm.
this thing is about to run. Once it
Mm-hmm.
got past that 400 level,
Mm-hmm.
because it had been at 400 before when he made a statement saying that he should take Tesla private at 400 a share. The stock price had ran up to 400 back then.
Mm-hmm.
So now, once it got beyond that 400, I said, this thing's going to the moon. I'm not selling anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an option contract. It's one contract. I couldn't scale out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's either you're going
Yeah.
to sell this contract or not.
Mm-hmm.
So now I just let it rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is after the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
this is how funny options are. That's why it's always good to buy time. When you plan these weeklies, plan these dailies, day trading options, you better have some capital and you better know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because time heals all wounds. So now, after the pandemic, that Tesla stock price had went from 980, wherever it was at a high, all the way down to 260 something dollars where I bought more shares.
Mm.
Right?
Mm. Yeah.
But by the time my contract was set to expire in June of 2020, guess how much that contract was worth if I would have still waited?
How much?
$68,000. The same thing I got out for. It lost its value because I think it actually went as high as about maybe 70,000. It lost its value during the pandemic and came all the way back because if you think by July, by June, it had already recovered. So Tesla had came back and went, where did it go? 1,000 at that point? So it was worth $68,000. So no, I had my mind fixed on what I wanted to do, which is important. Nothing more powerful than a made up mind. So now you have to make up your mind. You have to say, okay, I'm going to take 25% a day. I'm going to take 30% a day. Okay, if I take more than 30%, I'm only doing it on these particular plays. You have to lay out a plan for yourself. You have to lay out a plan for yourself. The hardest part about planning is actually sitting down and doing it. This is why most people don't succeed at businesses. Most people don't succeed at anything they're doing, because once somebody tells them, okay, what's your business plan? They have such a hard time sitting down and formulating this thing. So if you could get past the difficulty of putting a plan together, then you can be successful at anything. But you have to put your plan together. So how do I do it? I had to call on every different component of knowledge that I have about the market and about options and put it all into a plan. What makes sense? See, for me, even when the market started trading sideways, a couple months back, even now with the market really topsy-turvy and not really knowing which direction it want to go in, I take smaller percentages at that point. Because one thing for sure, two for certain, right? Consistency will keep you on afloat in this game, right?
Yeah.
And the market will give me 25 or 30% a lot faster than they'll give me 300%. I'm leaving myself more exposed waiting for that 300%. Why not get the 30% and get out the way? Some plays I make when I enter at the proper technical level, when I enter it the right way, I do the proper homework, when I'm sure about that trade, when I enter that thing, I get 30% instantly. I get 30% instantly. So this is what you got to do. You got to set forth your plan and have the discipline to be consistent at following that plan. Consistency wins. This is not a race. This is a marathon. So while you try to, if you're using this tool to pay bills and you don't have a system for paying bills, I have 3 different accounts. I have my long-term account. I have my main options account, and I have my bills and expense account. I pay my bills out of my bills and expense account. But if you don't have it set up like that and you need a short-term lick real quick because you got to pay something, that's the wrong way to approach this market.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make $100,000 tomorrow, but you only starting off with $2,000, it's the wrong way to approach this market.
So do you think you primarily trade or do you long-term invest? Meaning like trade options contracts, or do you focus more on your growth portfolio in terms of buying shares?
No, what I do is I take small portions of my gains and I put that towards buying more shares, or if I see a new prospective company that I like, I would take small percentages of my gains and put towards that. I have money coming in from other streams of income. I got brick and mortar business. I got Wise Money Academy. So I take money from different places to put towards my long-term portfolio, but I don't even pay attention to my long-term portfolio. It's a long-term portfolio. I did have a time frame in which I would sell my Tesla shares, or at least some of them, and that time is coming up. March of 2022. I'm supposed to get rid of some of those shares. I'll see when it gets there what the sentiment is about,
Tesla.
Whatever the sentiment is about Tesla and the market itself, the economy will determine that. But no, I'm a trader 24/7.
Okay. And what do you like about trading more than investing, I would say?
The excitement of staying, abreast to what's going on, and, pushing those buttons, man, reading those charts and taking advantage of price action and, just catching breakouts and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And it's just the trading.
It's an art.
It's fun. It's an art.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, right, when I put myself through my schooling with learning options and I had to figure out some of those things, with no one to help me figure them out, except, you know, a couple people that may or may not have been there or may not have wanted to help you out. They probably wanted you to figure it out on your own. It was like calculus, man. It was like I learned calculus, understanding the Greeks and understanding how they work, and being able to, after you understand how they work, to formulate your own strategy and figure out different, you know, ways of squeezing money out of the market just by understanding the Greeks. It's a blessing, man. I never thought I would know nothing like this. Come on, you talking about a young, you know, poverty-stricken, troublesome young kid with no education, and I buckled down and learned this thing, you know.
And you got it.
And now I'm teaching it to people through Wise Money Academy.
So do you find yourself talking about trading with like your friends and family? Like, do you talk to your daughter? Do you make her go through Wise Money Academy? Do you make your mom go through Wise Money Academy? Your siblings?
Yeah, it's funny about family. Friends more so will gravitate faster than family. You know, family, you know, my daughter see me making money. She see what I do. She see me teaching other people, and she's just not there
interested.
Yet. She just got with me the other day and asked me about Forex, and then she asked me, you know, about the course. So, you know, I sent her a link to the course, and I called her 5 days later. I said, you haven't opened the course yet. I would know if you open it up because my website will send me a notification. You haven't opened it up yet. And she was like, oh, I'm getting to it. And you get that type of thing from friends and family. But I'm always talking about it. They had me at a family gathering, actually my aunt's 70th birthday party. And everybody was asking me questions there. What should I do with my 401k? What is this? What is a 403b? What is an IRA? And I'm just in there speaking about all these different things.
So what do you think keeps ordinary people from getting into the market, like getting into investing and trading? What stops them from just getting into it?
Well, it depends on what you consider ordinary people. Your average working American?
Yeah.
They're probably already in the market and they just don't know it. They probably already got a 403b, 401k, a pension, a mutual fund, or something's been handed down to them. You know, a couple stocks, maybe some dividend stocks or something. Not enough for them to get excited about. But most people, 70% of the United States is already invested in the market unconsciously and indirectly through their jobs. So now when you're talking about, you know, more adverse areas and ghetto areas or poverty areas, you know, poverty-stricken areas, what prevents us a lot of times is just mindset. You know, we need a mindset makeover where we come from. And through that mindset, you know, we develop things like accountability. We stop complaining. We stop being dependent upon others. We stop looking for a lifeline from others, and we start doing more for ourselves. We start loving ourselves more. And it's a whole mindset that comes along with this, you know. You know, these are the things that creates a wealthy person, because a wealthy person has to be so from the mindset first. And then that wealthy person knows how to generate wealth monetarily, and also how to keep it and how to respect it, because they understand money is a tool, but if used improperly, it can hurt you instead of helping you, you know? And it's just mindset. We need a mindset makeover.
Yeah. I see it. I see the shift, because like even people in my personal life, like friends and family, they're getting interested in the stock market. They say they want to trade, but I think they need to learn about investing first, and just knowing about how to buy and sell a stock and like researching that before they get to trading, because trading is a little bit more complex. But I see the shift, and I see the shift on social media, where people are wanting to start businesses. People are wanting to grow their wealth and wanting to learn about growing wealth. So I do see the shift. It'll probably take a few years, maybe 5 or 10 years, but I think we're on the right track as a community.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you, because you got levels to this thing, you know. you got levels to being at the bottom. And the people I'm speaking about needing a mindset makeover, those are the people that, have kept themselves at the very bottom. These are people that I ride through when I'm riding through Jersey City, and I may have to deliver some laundry from my laundromat because my driver's not working today. And the people that I see out there, like, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue about anything. They don't even know that that place exists. You know how many guys that I was, met in the feds from Manhattan that didn't even know Wall Street was downtown. They didn't even know.
And they lived in Manhattan.
And they live right in Manhattan. Guys from Brooklyn, right across, a hop, skip, and a jump from Wall Street. They don't even know it exists. And, people, when I ride through these neighborhoods every day and I purposely get out and go in a bodega because I come from that element and grab me a water or something just to feel it. I need to feel the pessimism down there. I need to feel it. I need to feel it in order to be able to. I'm not judging them. I don't go there to judge them. I go there to strategize and see what my approach is going to be. How
you can target those people.
Yeah, because I'm going to be the change that I want to see. And I'm going to do what I can to help raise up and lift up as many of them as I can, because they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. Even me, even growing up from the same areas, I always knew I wanted something more for myself. And I always knew, maybe not with the confidence and the might that I have now, that I can do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But I'm talking about people that I pass every day and they don't have a clue. They just so full of complaints, so full of, lack of accountability, just so full of blame, so full of doubt, resentment. So the mindset has to be restructured. It has to be redeveloped before I can come down there and speak stock market to them. Yeah. Somebody asked me, he said, "Hey, Sam, why you don't go back in your own neighborhood and teach them young brothers that's still out there hustling how to get money in the stock market?" I said, because they haven't gotten rid of the criminal
mindset
portion of their mind yet. They haven't gotten rid of the criminal mindset yet. So if I teach them how to trade stocks, all they're going to do is find a new way to commit a crime. And guess what? I'm going to tell you like this. If you think the feds don't like drugs, play around with their money. One of my mentors from South Africa, he got 20 years for money for $30 million. So they don't like the drugs. They don't like you playing around with that money. They don't like it at all.
It's hard to realize, or for people not to realize, it's hard for people to accept that the position that they're in is their fault. And when people realize that, they can open their mind up to so many other things, but it's getting past that. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. Like getting past that, accepting that wherever you are in life, it's because of the decisions you've made. And you can either change your decisions that you're making, a conscious effort, like you said, or you can wallow in self-pity and stay under the poverty line for the rest of your life.
See, and you're correct, because Kayla, you got to understand, when I was in there and I was fighting a case against people that I knew in my mind, in my heart, was considered unbeatable, they were only considered that. They were considered that by pessimistic people. And I get why they're that way. One of my friends had life plus 60 years. So he had to finish the 60 years first and then start a life sentence. He had been arrested. He had been incarcerated since 1989. You know how much have changed since then? So, of course, when I speak to him, he's a pessimist. I used to go amongst the pessimists just so I could play devil's advocate with myself. Let me hear you tell me why I'm not going to win. So I could take that and use that in a strategic manner and flip it to my advantage.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? So this mentality that you're talking about, the first thing I had to do is be accountable for my situation. You had so many guys, man, they be like, man, F the prosecutor, F the judge. They got me in here. I don't even know why they trying to give me all this time. You gave you all that time. Guess what? I don't hate the prosecutor or the judge. I understand they got a job to do. Now, if they're doing that job in an iniquitous or malicious manner, that's on them. They got to deal with that with their creator. But the overall point is, and fact of the matter is that if I never stepped foot in Pittsburgh to sell heroin, I would have never had to meet that prosecutor or meet that judge who judges me or prosecutes me in a hateful manner. So it's on me. It was my decisions that led me into this predicament. So now I can't have hate or contempt in my heart for anybody. I got to clear my heart and my mind of that so I can be strategic. Because if you're running around and you're blaming everybody else for your situation, the same people you blame for your problems, you're going to look towards for a solution. I knew the judge and the prosecutor didn't have my solution to my problem. So I had to figure that out on my own. And in that accountability comes power. What happens is you start to build your confidence. And once you start to build your confidence, you don't have to look for ideas no more. They come out of nowhere. I might just run into you in the hallway and you may say something to me. Hey, did you ever think about looking at this? And I'll be like, wow, I never even thought about that. Because I already created the momentum to figure this thing out. But here's the situation. It might have not been your fault that the trap was laid, but it's your fault that you fell into it. And it's your fault that you remain in it. You see what I'm saying? So you're right about accountability. Accountability is the power to be resourceful, the power to solve your own solutions. And this is where true wealth lies. Are you a solution-focused person or a problem-focused person? Well, more than likely, if you're complaining all the time, you are a problem-focused person. So you get on your knees and pray. The same guys I hear complaining, saying F the prosecutor and the judge, they go to church on Sundays. They're in there praying to get out of jail. God helps those who helps themselves. What does he mean by that? He means that, okay, I hear your prayer, but now what are you going to do to condition yourself to receive it? Are you going to continue to pray, or are you going to get up and create momentum for this blessing or this package I have to send to you to get to your address? What are you going to do? So now you got the same people who pray, get up, go complain about what they just prayed about, negate the prayer, cut off their connection to the universe, and then they're stuck in the same situation again. So it shows that you're ungrateful, and it shows that you doubt the power of whoever your God is. Because after you pray on it, there's no need to complain about it no more.
Wow. I couldn't have said it better myself. I love the way you explain things, because that's how I wish I could explain things, but that's exactly what it is. And we're getting there. We're getting there one way or another. We're going to get there.
Just start telling yourself in the morning that I can explain things that way.
Yeah.
You know what to do. You know what to do.
I do. But I want to thank you, Santino, so much for coming on the show.
Yes, I thank you too.
I've learned so much. I've had a few eye-openers in just the things that you've been talking about and saying. I actually kind of want to do another podcast, kind of just breaking down what you said. It'll be like a solo podcast, but I'm going to kind of break down what you said because I really, really liked it. But thank you once again for coming on the show.
No question. Anytime.
I'm going to make sure that in the show notes that I'll put all your information in to make sure people follow you and join your course so they can learn trading, because I really think that you are a good mentor and trader. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kayla. Black Girl Options.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap for this episode of the Black Girl Option podcast. I hope you guys gained some insight and learned something new. Don't forget that episodes drop every first and third Monday of each month. So please hit the follow button and follow me on Instagram at BlackGirlOption. See you all on the next episode.